honored guests, thank you for coming to this assembly. If you'll please take a seat, our meeting will start presently. Gentlemen, you have the floor.
Hey, Daniel, question
Yeah,
for
Ryan.
you. All right, yeah, so the question I have for you this week is, if you could know the answer to one question in the universe, what would it be?
What a great question, Ryan. I was
Only
thinking
one.
I was thinking about that during my day today, and I think the question I would most want to know the answer to in the
Yes, all of the universe.
whole universe, and that really shaped kind of how I answered the question. It would be, are aliens real?
Ooh, okay, that's a good one.
Because I think, first of all, it would be great to just know for sure.
Yeah.
Like, are they, are they not?
You probably make a lot of money off of that.
Yeah, exactly. And if you just knew that for a fact, either you could stop wasting your time, sending probes to other planets, or you could be like, yep, they're definitely out there, and you could start preparing, and that would really change the way that the world kind of views itself.
Yeah, like would you then know based on that question like everything about them, or is it just like a yes or no, like yes, aliens are real?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you interpret the question, right? Like, if my answer is, are aliens real, if it's a yes or no, or if I can ask like a more complicated question, what sort of aliens are out there, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe to get some more information about, are they like single-celled organisms on some distant planet, or are they, an intelligent life form?
Using like stars to power their ships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like all the good science fiction stories. So that would be the question that I would want to know.
All right.
What about
we kind of
yourself?
went with a similar vein there, because I'm going spacey sort of universe question too.
Okay.
I would want to know. Well, my first thought was like, what is dark matter? Like, what is it?
Okay.
Because that's looking up stuff about dark matter and just the weird unknown questions we have about space is so cool. I love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided to go even deeper than that. My question would be how was the universe created? Like, because like there's this story about like, God created the world in 7 days, and then there's like evolution and all this, but like however it happened, like I want to know how. Like how does like if it was created from nothing, I want to know how that happens. Or like I want to know the origins of all of that before the stuff was there, I guess. I'm just really curious about that and how it all looked. So
Sure.
I would love to have a play-by-play, like a GoPro version. There's just like all of a sudden, boom! There's everything.
Or like a behind-the-scenes documentary
Ooh,
on like the creation of the universe.
Could you imagine David Attenborough like just documenting for me the whole creation or expansion of the universe?
That would be so good.
Oh, man. That I would never watch anything again for the rest of my life. I would just have that on repeat. That would be so cool. So that's my question is, will David Attenborough document for me the creation of the universe?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, anyway, welcome to the Assemblymen, everyone, where it's okay to ask for directions. Here at the Assembly, our purpose is personal development, and each week our goal is to highlight one virtue of outstanding individuals for us to cultivate in our own lives. This week we have a theme. What is our theme this week?
Today's theme.
So this week the theme for our episode is purpose.
Purpose.
Not porpoise, not talking about dolphins.
Not the dolphin. Nobody wants to talk about the Dolphins. They're terrible.
It's a disaster.
Ooh, that team.
Careful before this turns into a sports podcast, right?
Yeah. Nobody wants to hear about football.
But when we think about or talk about purpose, Ryan, what's something that comes to mind for you?
Purpose. Well, to be honest, when I think of the word purpose, I think of all those cheesy like wood ornament things that you can hang on your wall that are like, coffee is my purpose, or like those dumb things that people can hang up where it's like that's not even close to accurate. But if I was to be kind of serious in thinking about purpose, just like, the why behind something. Like why does this exist? Just in general.
Yeah.
Who wanted this?
Right. Yeah. I think the why is really a good answer from just kind of a general thing. If you look it up in a dictionary, purpose is the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. So it's kind of like you said, the reason behind the thing itself.
Yeah. Just this week I was talking with some people about a cup of coffee, and this will make sense here in a second. But so my question was like, how did the coffee get there? It was on the counter, and it's like, how did the coffee get there? And it was like, well, there's this process. You can take ground up beans, you put water through it, percolates, and then it like gets the flavoring of it all, blah 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 blah, like the whole process. And I was like, okay, sweet. So we know how it got there. Why is it there? Like, why is the coffee on the table? It was because I wanted a cup of coffee,
Right.
And so we talked about the idea of purpose actually through that. Is that like, what is the why behind your life? And we'll get into that as we go throughout this episode.
Yeah. So as kind of an example of purpose and some of the things that can look like in a life, we have another segment of this week's Look at This Guy.
Look at this guy.
So this week's Look at This Guy is probably the least famous person I think we've covered so far on this podcast.
I like it. Branching into obscurity.
Right. I mean, not that really any of our people have been super famous, at least the real humans that we've talked about.
Except for Frederick Douglass. He's pretty famous.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't know a lot about him beforehand.
That's fair.
That's because I'm an uneducated.
You are not.
No. But this week we are talking about a man named Bruce Olson.
Bruce Olson. All right.
And Bruce Olson, kind of a high level, is a missionary. I believe he's still alive. A missionary to Central America, particularly Colombia and Venezuela.
Okay.
Starting in the 60s and then going on through basically the rest of his life. Kind of became an ambassador for some of the people groups down there. But his story is really unique and really fascinating, and a good example of kind of the why behind our lives and the way that things are. So
okay.
I'll kind of dive in a little bit to his story. Bruce Olson was born in Minnesota in the 40s. Grew up in a Lutheran Christian home, so kind of was around the Bible and all of that stuff. But from a young age, Bruce loved languages.
Okay.
And so like at age 14, he was teaching himself biblical Greek so that he could read the New Testament in Greek.
Wait, at 14?
At 14.
Okay, at 14 I was memorizing codes to video games, but
Well, if the video games hadn't been invented, because this was like in the 50s.
That's true. More production. More productive lives.
Right. So like he was super uncoordinated and awkward. He couldn't play sports like a lot of his friends did in Minnesota.
Okay.
He loved to study. He was basically a classic nerd.
Oh, probably got the taped up glasses and everything.
Yeah, he was our people, Ryan.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so he loved languages, and eventually in high school, he kind of began taking his Christian faith more seriously, and started looking for kind of, what was his purpose in life? Why did he have the interests and abilities that he had? What could he do with those to kind of live out his Christian life, and what had God called him to do?
Okay.
His thought. So his first thought was, he was going to go to a university and become like a linguistics professor. So he loved languages, and he thought, I mean, that would be a natural fit for him. He'd be very good at languages.
Yeah, for sure.
He knew multiple languages at that point in time. But God seemed to be calling him to be a missionary. And he was like, I don't really know that I want to do that, but, maybe we'll try it out. So he kind of went through the process of applying to different missions boards. He really was fascinated by the culture of South and Central America.
Okay.
And so he thought, well, that would be as good a place as any. And all of the mission boards were rejecting him because he, didn't, he was like an 18, 19-year-old kid from Minnesota. Like, he didn't have a support church. Like, he didn't have like a family that really was going to support him in that. So he was kind of on his own. He didn't really fit in anywhere.
Like up the creek without a paddle or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so he eventually just decided to book a plane ticket to Venezuela and fly down there. He knew a guy who was a missionary down there, who was going to meet him at the airport.
Okay. So he doesn't know anybody really. Correct. And then just buys a plane ticket and go. What did his family think of this?
Well, his family had basically kind of disowned him since he started taking his Christianity more seriously.
Really?
And so he was basically totally on his own.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, he goes down to Venezuela. Now, at this time, in the book, there's a book written about his life called Brushko, which I really recommend. It's a solid book if you're at all interested in the story.
Brushko.
Yeah, Brushko. He speaks 4 languages.
Okay.
Those 4 languages are English, Greek, Biblical Hebrew, and Latin.
Okay. Great.
So he's going down to Central America where the predominant language is Spanish, and he does not speak Spanish.
Solid plan.
He doesn't know anybody there.
That's amazing.
It's amazing because he shows up at the airport, and the missionary who was supposed to meet him there isn't there.
Let's go back. So he's going to this place, doesn't know the language, right? And can't talk to anybody. That's like me going into Bed Bath & Beyond, like, or Bed Bath & Body Works. It's like, I don't know what's going on.
I have no clue what is happening here. So eventually he meets a Catholic priest who's traveling through the airport who speaks Latin. And he talks Latin to the priest. The priest talks to the people at the airport in Spanish to get some information. And eventually he is taken in by kind of some college students who are living in the area, who kind of take him under the wing as this foreigner, and kind of get him by.
This is how horror movies start. I just want to put that out there.
100%. It's a crazy story. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit because there's a lot of stuff that happens in his life.
And if people want to read about him, get to know him, Brushko is the name of the book? Yeah,
Brushko. Bruchko is how you spell that.
Okay.
But that's the story. Basically, he ends up deciding that he really wants to be a missionary in Central America. And he wants to contact a group of a tribe of Indians called the Matalones. And the Matalones are basically this Stone Age tribe that has never been successfully contacted by outside civilization. Okay. No one knows their language. No one knows their customs. Anyone who tries to contact them gets murdered, and they find their bodies in the jungle.
Okay. All right. Well, he's made it this far without knowing anything that's going on.
Exactly. And so again, everything is kind of motivated by what's my purpose in life? What am I doing here? Why am I so good at these things and not good at things that I want to be good at, like sports or anything like that? So he makes his way into the jungle. He finally finds some people. He kind of gets in with another Indian tribe, the Yukos, that are kind of neighbors to the Matalones, and even they're scared of the Matalones. They're like, we don't deal with them. Basically bribes one of them to lead him to a Matalone camp and barely escapes with his life. But he is so convinced that this is where God wants him that he kind of regroups back in one of the cities and, kind of amasses his resources and goes back to the Mothalones. And through years of living with them, basically learns their language, creates a written form of that language, translates the Bible into that written language, and then not only like converts large portions of their tribe, but begins representing the Motalone tribe in like the national government and as different government things. Like he becomes their ambassador, basically.
Wow, that's crazy.
And he does it all by like actually learning their language, because at the time, a lot of the missionaries in at least in the story in South America, when they come into a tribe, they try to convert it to kind of Western version of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
So they build churches and they kind of give them kind of the Western civilization version of what Christianity looks like, and it's not particularly well received because the Indians, in order to convert, they have to basically leave their whole lifestyle behind.
Yeah.
There's one point where he's talking to one of the tribes, and there's like a missions camp in the village, and they're like, well, why don't we go to church? To some of the Indians there, and they're like, oh, we don't go to that church. It's a square building. And they're like, why would we do that? Like, clearly God is round because all of our buildings are round. Why would we deny this and go be a part of those weirdos over there in the square building? And so Brushko, which is his name that the Matalones give him, basically he succeeds by using the abilities that he has and then trying to kind of understand and develop an empathy for the Matalones and really working to figure out what their culture is and the ways that they kind of naturally leads to Christianity. It turns out that there's a lot of legends and their stories that kind of have Christian counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
So he's able to kind of share the gospel with them by talking about things they already know about and using their own language, their own words to explain to them these ideas.
Oh, wow.
They get them to believe in Jesus. So it's always been, ever since my dad read me this book, like when I was a kid, it's always been one of those really cool stories about a real person who didn't fit in and didn't know how they fit in.
Yeah.
And then in the wildest series of events ends up finding the purpose for their life in a completely unexpected way because they were consistent and obedient with what they felt God was calling them to do.
And he found where he fit in, where no one fit in. You know, like maybe that's where he needed to look. Is like stop thinking about, oh, I wish I could be like this or I wish I could do that. But like, well, maybe shift your perspective a little bit, and that's exactly what he did. That's really cool.
Yeah. So it's a great book, like I said, Brushko. Check it out at a library or order it. It's a really good book. I'd really recommend it.
All right. Well, now we're gonna have a brief recess.
Dad Joke Corner.
Hey, Daniel.
Yeah, Ryan.
So I startled my next door neighbor with my new electric power tool that I had. He screamed, but I had to calm him down by saying, "Don't worry, don't panic. This is just a drill."
Ryan, I just found out that ARG is not a real word.
Really?
I can't express how angry I am.
Wow. I'm so sorry.
This has been Dad Joke Corner.
Preparing you for the future. Truth be told, I'm not sorry. I love dad jokes.
There's just something so quality about them.
Right. Speaking of quality, here at the Assemblymen Podcast, at this meeting that we have with all of you, we believe in giving quality advice. We believe in the quality of what we have to say to the nth degree, where we just place it above all other things I say in jest, just to let you know in case you couldn't tell. But today we are going to be taking a well-known phrase, a phrase that is used, I would say more often than it should be, and we are going to be tearing it apart piece by piece to let you know why we think it has some problems with it on this segment called Here's Why You're Wrong.
Here's why you're wrong.
So today, our theme is purpose. Our message is purpose today. And there's a well-known phrase that goes with this idea, Dan. I don't know if you've heard it before, but if something happens in your life, it's very possible that somebody may come along and tell you that everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason, Dan.
I have heard that phrase, Ryan, as I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast has.
But everything does. There's a reason behind everything, right? Right? There's a reason behind all things?
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I think, yes, there is a reason. Sometimes that reason is you're stupid.
Okay. Wow.
Like, I think...
Hot takes over here.
Yeah. First thing I'm going to say is by definition, there is a reason for anything that happens just because of the nature of cause and effect.
You're okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. That's true.
That was a point I was going to bring up, but I'll get to my point later. Don't worry about it.
So just as a blanket thing. However, that does not mean that everything that happens is the result of some grand orchestrated, cosmic or divine plan or anything like that, down to the every detail. Sometimes the reason why something happened is because you or someone else made a mistake, or they messed up, or they did something stupid or dumb, and we are dealing with the consequences of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that can be a valid reason for things to happen. Like you messed up.
So, would you mind lifting up your arm for everyone to see the beautiful piece of artwork? Yeah. So if you can tell, it's a little bit grainy, but if you can tell, there is a beautiful unicorn on Daniel's arm. Would you mind explaining why that's there?
Yeah. So the other day I was doing laundry here. At my place, and I was also talking on the phone at the same time, and I was carrying the basket of clothes down, and I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna not step on the last step. And I took a step, and there was nothing there, and I fell, and the basket of clothes fell, and the phone fell, and on the way down, the banister just kind of took a whole chunk out of my arm, and I laid sprawling on the floor with all of my clothes.
Just covered in blood.
And my dad's still talking on the phone because he didn't realize anything had happened.
Oh no!
But and then I got back to the apartment and realized the only Band-Aids I have were these unicorn Band-Aids that I got as a gag gift from Ryan's wife like a couple years ago at a Christmas party. And so now, because they're the only Band-Aids I had to wear it into work. And so everyone at the place where I work is like, why do you have a unicorn on your arm? It happened for a reason. And that reason was I was just not paying attention and fell down the stairs like a klutz.
But playing devil's advocate, maybe there's a reason you came to the Christmas party and got those bandages, because otherwise you wouldn't have had any.
And I could have bled out.
Yeah, right there on the floor. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the reason you had to put a Band-Aid on is because you just missed the step.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can logically argue about a grand plan behind all of that, right? I don't know. But so there's a phrase or there's a label that can be given to that idea called like a blueprint theology. If we're talking about like a cosmic, like a God who's behind everything, directing everything, there's a blueprint theology that says that everything, like in making a house or a structure or whatever, like everything is laid out and is taken into account, where like everything has its place in a blueprint. And so all things work according to this cosmic blueprint. And the stuff that you do is already like, okay, this is what's going to happen and the exact order of how it's going to go. There's that. Many people actually believe this, especially on the evangelical side of things when it comes to like theological discussion and all that. But that's not the only one there is. There's another one that I'm actually reading about currently. I just picked up a book this week called Satan and the Problem of Evil. By Boyd. Yeah. It's a really good one. It's written in like layman's terms, most of it, but it's talking about the problem of evil, especially when it comes to the idea of a blueprint theology. And it discusses another one called a warfare theology, talking about like two kingdoms. I'm not going to get into the super nitty gritty details. If you want to know, you can look it up yourself. But it talks about two kingdoms, the idea of things being at war, and then how like sometimes the reason for things is not some like grand good behind everything, but because like there's two sides to a war, and sometimes the reason is actually evil. Mm-hmm. So like for instance, natural disasters or things like kidnappings or horrific tragedies that befall us that just you can't even express how awful they are. Like the cliche is like, oh, all things have a reason, or like everything happens for a reason, or all things work together for good. There's caveats to those things. Everything may happen for a reason, and the reason you fell down the stairs is because you missed the step. Sometimes the reason bad things happen is because evil exists. Mm-hmm. and it just like it does things that destroy lives. Right. I believe, personally, I can only speak for myself in saying that I believe that all things can be worked for good, but that does not necessitate that all things are good.
Yeah.
And I think it's a mistake to say otherwise.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times when people say this, it's because they are trying to almost kind of in a backhanded way, like blame God or blame some kind of divine power for the bad things that are happening in their life. And they're trying to kind of shrug it off and say, well, it's not really that bad because, God, it's all part of God's plan or God's purpose.
That can be one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Or, everything happens for a reason, it's kind of some divine kind of, or like a karmic sort of a thing that it was just meant to be this way. Mm-hmm. And I think to say that, especially in the face of like you were talking about with the atrocities and the natural disasters, is really to belittle how bad those things are. Like there is evil and horrible things that happen in the world, and to actually call those out and say, nope, that's evil and bad. Like that should not have happened. That was not the way things are supposed to happen.
Yeah,
is completely justifiable in those cases.
Yeah. And if anybody's interested in the comparison of those different viewpoints, I know that was only two. It's not an exhaustive list, but like the Satan and the Problem of Evil by Boyd is a great resource to read about that. But so to kind of summarize this, everything happens for a reason. I would venture to speak for both of us in saying that, like, yes, we believe that, but not in the way that it's always presented.
Right.
Because not always, but usually it is presented in a way that it's like, oh, there's a greater good behind all this, and just wait it out. It's going to get good. Don't worry about this. But I don't agree with that.
Right. Exactly, and that's why whoever says that is wrong.
And that's why we put it in this segment of Here's Why You're Wrong. So that was a little intense there.
Yeah. Ooh, we got.
I like getting real. Like getting real. But speaking of getting real, I think our audience is going to enjoy this next segment where we discuss hard-hitting topics in our own debates from the annals of history.
Debates from the annals of history.
So today we got a spicy one for you.
Oh, so spicy.
If you like being inside during the summer, then you're going to love this one because we're going to blow your mind today.
I live in Wisconsin. I cannot relate to this a little bit.
Of those viewers that we have in the South, you might appreciate this one more. But so the question that we have is, does turning up the AC, so up in quotations, does turning up the AC make it hotter or colder?
Right. And I just want to come out and say, first of all, it clearly makes it colder. Okay. The reason
really?
Turning up the AC makes it colder is
Okay.
because you're not turning up the temperature. You are turning up the AC. When the AC is functioning at a higher level, it is cooling the air. That's what
Really?
the C in AC stands for. Is cooling.
These are some strange assumptions you're making.
And so turning up the AC means that you are just like if you were to turn up anything. If you were to turn the volume up on the radio, the radio is functioning at a higher level, or it is producing more noise, more volume, and therefore, if you turn up the AC functions at a higher volume, which means that it is producing more cold air and it makes things colder.
All right. Yeah. Great opening statement. The problem I think that you're going to run into is that you're operating under assumptions that just aren't true, because I don't think the C actually stands for cooling. I'm pretty sure the A in AC stands for air conditioning. And so, coming out with my argument, conditioning. I want to focus on that word for a second. If we condition something, we're molding it. We're changing it. I'm conditioning something. If we're conditioning the air, I'm changing it to a more desirable set of circumstances. If I want it to be hot, I will turn the AC to condition the air to make it hot. If I want it cold, I will condition the air to make it colder. But if I'm turning something up, if I'm turning it up, it gets higher. What happens when you go from 32 to 70? What happened? What'd you do?
You raised the temperature.
You did. You went up. No, you did. You went up. You raised the temperature, sure, but you turned the conditioning up to a more desirable temperature.
You stopped conditioning it because
I did not. I have a heater.
The natural condition of the air in the summer when the AC is being used is hot.
So if that's the case, you just leave your heater off during the winter.
If you don't condition it, it stays hot. So if you turn the conditioning up, it means you start conditioning it, which means the air starts being conditioned to a cooler temperature where you want it, and thus it gets colder.
If I turn up the volume in my car, I watch that number go up. It never goes down when I turn it up. If I turn on the stove and I turn up the temperature, it goes up, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm turning up the AC, I'm conditioning it to a higher degree. I'm never turning down the AC.
You're talking about the result. I'm talking about the function of the machine. If I'm turning up the function of the machine is to make it colder. If I turn the AC up and it gets warmer, it's a broken AC.
The function is to condition the air to the desired effect. That's the function. And the conditioning is based off of the temperature scale. So if I turn it up, I'm turning up the temperature.
No. If you need to turn the temperature or increase the temperature in your home, you turn on the heater or you turn up the thermostat. The AC is independent of the heater. It could be tied to the thermostat, but at that point, you're turning the thermostat up to lower the AC. If you are turning the AC itself up, it is because you are making it colder.
And I say, if somebody asks me to turn up the AC, I'm going to turn up the temperature because it's conditioning the air to a higher degree. All right, I think this is, we're at a deadlock here. I don't think we can figure this out.
No way to settle this. No way to settle this.
It's gotten heated. I think we both made good points, but mine were better.
The audience thinks that mine were better. So
I disagree.
But there's only one way of letting us know, audience. It's for you to let us know, to write in, to send us your comments, tell us whether Daniel is right, obviously, or you if you're wrong and think Ryan was right.
We're going to put out a post this week on Facebook, and we're going to ask you what you thought of that. So I expect to see an answer because I want to see that I'm right.
Yes, and I want to see Ryan cry. But in the future, for additional great debates, we are looking for guest judges to help decide these great debates and as well as the other competitions we have planned. So if you listening to this or watching this are interested in being featured on a future segment, you can send us an email with the subject line guest judge, and we can try to coordinate an appearance.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Assemblymen Podcast. You can find our episodes on YouTube, Podbean, and SoundCloud, and just search for the Assemblymen Podcast. If you have any feedback topics you'd like to send us to discuss or questions you'd like us to answer, please email us at the Assemblymen Podcast at gmail.com. I'll say that again, the Assemblymen Podcast at gmail.com, or connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/the Assemblymen Pod. That one is facebook.com/the Assemblymen Pod. We'd love to hear from you and continue the conversation.
Also, if you like what you heard and believe in what we're doing, please leave us a rating or review in your podcast platform of choice. And if you know anyone else who might enjoy listening, feel free to share us with a friend or an enemy, anyone at all.
Police officers.
That really helps us grow our audience and means we get to welcome even more people into the assembly.
So, Daniel, what did you learn today?
Well, I learned that if anyone ever asks Ryan temperature-related questions, they better be prepared for disappointment.
Oof. All right.
Also learned that the Assemblymen, this is basically our book club episode, because I think we recommended more books for people to read this episode than ever before. So if someone out there wants to join or start the Assemblymen book club, I would love to be a part of that.
We'll leave the books titles in the description below our videos and below our MP4 file, so don't worry about that. What I learned today was that Bruce Olson was really cool. Brushko is a really cool dude, and his purpose was realized in a place he didn't expect. And sometimes... I'm getting actually serious for this one. What did we learn today?
I know, right? Myself.
I know, right? But I just wanted to kind of summarize this because it's been something I've been thinking about. Is that like sometimes your purpose is found in places that you least expect it, and where you feel like I wish I could be like this, but you don't fit in. Maybe change your perspective up a little bit, because you might just find that you fit a niche that nobody else can. You never know.
That was surprisingly heartwarming, Ryan.
Well, thank you. I don't expect it too often. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate every single one of you out there.
Yes, and until next time,
meeting adjourned.